Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, so our mission today, it's pretty focused. We're going to dive into a whole set of source materials telling this, well, really compelling story. It's about resilience, heritage, and cultivation, specifically in the legal cannabis market. We're looking at Huckleberry Hill Farms and its founder, Johnny Casali. He's a real icon up in Humboldt County. And the core thing we're tracking here is this incredible paradox. A specific plant Casali was growing back in the mid-90s under serious threat from federal law, while that same plant material is now winning major industry awards. So we want to show you how a legacy like that survives, and maybe more importantly, how it actually rebuilds itself. Yeah, and that idea of rebuilding is it's crucial. When we talk about legacy in cannabis, it's deeper than just, being around for a long time. It's really tied to survival. It means you kept specific genetics, specific quality, going against some intense pressure, federal, economic, environmental, you name it. The fact that Huckleberry Hill Farms is thriving today, that really proves this deep, persistent commitment to the craft.
Okay, right. So let's unpack the history a bit. We should start with the place, the geography. We're talking southern Humboldt County, right? Deep under those famous redwood trees. That's the setting for Huckleberry Hill Farms.
Exactly. And that specific place, southern Humboldt, it's like the crucible where this was all forged.
Yeah.
Casali, he learned how to cultivate from his mother way, way before anyone was seriously thinking about legalization.
Yeah.
So you've got this direct line of traditional, really devoted farming. I mean, total devotion to the soil, the sun. These weren't fancy indoor setups. They were small gardens, tended really carefully. But the risk was always there. Huge risks.
Yeah, the sources really paint that picture. Life was precarious. There's this phrase that jumps out. Every season was survival, just constant pressure. But that high-risk period, it eventually led to, well, the ultimate conflict, didn't it? That turning point in the mid-1990s.
Precisely. That was really the peak of the federal crackdown in that area. The farm was raided, and Casali was arrested for growing the exact same kind of plant that today is, celebrated as part of Humboldt's identity and economy. It really throws the cost of prohibition into sharp relief.
And what was that cost? It wasn't minor, was it? Not just a fine or something?
No, it was life-changing. He ended up serving 8 years in federal prison, then another 5 years of probation after that. I mean, that's over a decade of his life just gone. And beyond losing his freedom, he lost his home. Tragically, his mother passed away while he was incarcerated, and really critically for the farm's future, he lost access to all the genetics, the actual living plants he'd spent his life cultivating.
Wow. Okay, when you list it like that, home, family, freedom, and the physical plants representing his life's work, it feels like the story should end there, as a tragedy. But this is where things take a turn and where the sources really show what community resilience actually means.
Yeah, that's the key takeaway, really. The reason this story isn't just a sad footnote is, well, it's entirely down to the community. While Casali was locked up, his friends, they took huge risks themselves. They kept those specific heirloom genetics safe. They preserved them. And this act, preservation over profit, that's probably the single most critical detail in this whole story.
Wait, I want to pause on that for a second because that's a really important technical point, isn't it? When we say genetics were preserved, we're not talking about putting seeds in a cold vault somewhere.
No, that's exactly right. This is about living plant material. The real value of this kind of legacy is in preserving the cut. A cut is a clone, right? An exact genetic duplicate of the mother plant. If you grow from seed, you always get some variation, slightly different plants. To keep a specific prized line stable, you have to preserve the cut, which means someone had to keep a mother plant, or maybe a series of mother plants, alive and healthy for 8 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and that takes serious dedication, plus a lot of operational risk, especially back then during Prohibition.
So his friends were basically running a secret living genetic library for him the whole time he was gone? That completely reframes it. It makes those genetics less of a commodity and more almost sacred, a symbol of loyalty.
Absolutely. That deep community support. That's really the emotional heart of the Huckleberry Hill story.
Okay, so after 8 years, Casali gets out. He comes back to a farm that's overgrown, probably looks pretty rough. But the sources say he had this unbroken spirit and his friends were there. What was the first thing they gave back to him? What was the key?
It was the preserved Paradise Punch cut. And this wasn't just, any plant. This was the family line. The genetic heritage he'd built with his mother. It's the tangible thing connecting that really difficult, risky past to this hopeful legal future. It was literally the raw material he needed to rebuild everything.
Right. And from that moment, getting that Paradise Punch back, the next chapter starts almost immediately. The deliberate creation of what would become an award-winning strain. Whitethorn Rose, WTR.
Yeah, this wasn't an accident. It was a
Yeah.
very intentional breeding project. They took that essential paradise punch
Yeah.
and they crossed it with lemon OG. The idea was to take their core legacy flavor profile and combine it with traits that were really needed to succeed in the challenging modern legal environment, especially in Humboldt.
Okay, so what were those specific traits they were breeding for? Particularly thinking about, the tough Humboldt weather, the dampness.
Resilience was key. Two things were really vital for surviving up there: an early finish and mold resistance. If your plants finish too late in the season, the autumn rains, the fog rolls in, and boom, you can lose your whole crop to mold, like overnight. So WTR was bred specifically to mature earlier to get the harvest in safely. And then, of course, they were also selecting for those deep, unique floral notes and really strong resin production.
So blending that practical toughness with exceptional flavor and aroma, that leads us to the strain's name, right? Which itself carries a lot of symbolic weight.
Oh, absolutely. The name Whitethorn Rose, it's maybe the most personal detail we found in the sources. It's named for his hometown, Whitethorn, and for his partner, Rose Moberly. So this strain, it literally becomes a living symbol of the love and the place that helped him get through those incredibly hard years. It's like the physical result of the community and the people who kept that legacy alive.
And what really seemed to launch WTR, taking it from maybe a cherished local strain to something known more widely, was its smell and taste, right? The sources keep mentioning this unique candy citrus and lavender aroma.
Yes, that was definitely the hook. That really distinct terpene profile combined with how the plant produces resin, it makes these large uniform trichome heads. That made it an immediate, prime candidate for high-end extraction artists. It pretty quickly gained this reputation as a solventless icon.
Okay, for listeners who maybe don't follow the extraction side super closely, what does that mean exactly? When we call a strain a solventless icon, why is that such a big deal for validation?
Right, it's really high praise. Solventless extraction basically uses only mechanical methods: ice, water, heat, pressure. No chemical solvents like butane or ethanol are involved. So WTR is called an icon because its specific genetics, the structure of its resin glands, allow extractors to get a really clean, high yield of bubble hash, which is then often pressed into live rosin. It means the flower itself is top tier, pure, and capable of producing these amazing solventless concentrates. It's not just about clever processing. The plant itself has to be exceptional.
Gotcha. And this is where the legal market really starts to embrace this legacy, right? The source material points to specific partnerships that turned this flower into, I think they called it resin art.
Yeah, those collaborations are super important because they show the established legal industry actively seeking out this specific legacy material. They teamed up with some real leaders, Heritage Hash Co., and the sources specifically mention the skill of their lead hasher, Cherry Blossom Bell, also Aypapico and Friendly Brand California. These are expert processors who took that WTR flower and turned it into these really high-end products. Award-winning live rosin, cured resin, and that ultra-pure full melt hash.
Okay, let's hone in on that quality benchmark you just mentioned, the full melt. The source details a huge recent win. Aypapico won the Golden Bear in 2024. For WTR 6-star full melt, what does 6-star full melt actually tell us? Is that the absolute peak of purity?
It is, yeah. It's the highest possible grade for hash. Full melt means the hash is so pure, basically just the resin heads, no plant gunk left, that when you apply a little heat, it melts completely away, leaving zero residue. 6-star is that perfect melt, the best quality, the highest purity you can get. And the Golden Bear, just for context, that's the top award at the Cali Cannabis Awards, a major competition. So for a legacy farm like Huckleberry Hill, working with an extractor like Aypapico, to win that specific award in 2024, it's huge validation. It proves that the genetics they risked so much for decades ago are now producing literally the finest, most sought-after products in today's market.
That's quite the journey, from a plant that lands you in federal prison to one winning the industry's top honors. So what's next? The story clearly isn't finished. Casali and Rose Moberly, they're still actively working, right?
Oh yeah, they're definitely not slowing down. The focus now seems to be on continuing that genetic story. They're actively breeding the next generation of Huckleberry Hill lines. Strains like Riddlez, Paradise Surprise, Rainbow Rose, they're taking everything they learned about resilience and quality and channeling it into new projects. And importantly, the business side, things like seed licensing, distribution that's being handled more formally now through an entity called Tangled Roots Legacy. So they're ensuring this heritage has a structure for the future.
Okay, so if we kind of pull back and look at the whole arc, the incarceration, the community saving the genetics, the return, the breeding, and now the 6-star recognition, What's the ultimate message here? What does Casali's story really offer us?
I think it's just a profound story about redemption, about freedom. And it's captured perfectly in that idea that legacy isn't grown, it's regrown. It really highlights how that historical knowledge, the genetic stability, the sheer dedication to the craft, even when it was illegal and dangerous, is actually what's defining and stabilizing the very top tier of the legal industry now. It's really a testament to human connection, perseverance, all preserved through this one plant line.
That is a powerful way to put it. And for you, the listener, we hope this deep dive really underscores not just the history, but the incredible human effort that goes into preserving valuable knowledge, valuable genetics like this. The Rise of Whitethorn Rose, it's fundamentally a story about community support overcoming institutional punishment. It shows that the kind of human value of that historical sacrifice, it's now literally embedded in some of the most prized cannabis products available today.
Which I think brings up a really important question for you to maybe think about after this. Given this history, the immense sacrifice, the 8 years in prison, losing his home, the risks his friends took just to keep those cuts alive, how should the industry truly define and, maybe more importantly, compensate legacy cultivation? Should that value only be tied to the sales they make now in the legal market? Or should there be some way to honor, to calculate the value of those decades of risk, of sacrifice that came before legalization, the very things that allowed these defining genetics to even survive? Working out that calculation, that feels like the next crucial step for the legal market.